in Spanish.
Hey everybody, look, it went live. It didn't do try to reconnect. Hey everyone, today is Thursday, March 29th, and I'm here with my friend Niel Guilarte. Is that it right?
Yep, Guilarte.
All right, Guilarte, that's better. And we were already having a great time. They got here, he and his beautiful wife who's in the audience. You can't see her. I wish we could do the dual cameras and have that whole... One day, people, one day. We're on episode 147 of the show, and Niel was kind enough to come and engage me and give us, all of us, his branding knowledge and talk about podcasting and digital marketing, digital media. So let us know you can hear us or see us. That's the most important thing. We've gone off the deep end and we're not using a mic anymore. And did you know that those numbers don't mean anything, that little live 2 up there? They don't mean anything. John Murphy, let us know you can hear us or see us. Okay, we got a thumbs up, so we're good.
Getting some love.
People can actually remove themselves and they don't have to be seen. So you don't know the real count till the end of who's watched the show.
Wow.
All right, so welcome to the show. We met in an interesting way. This is actually our first time physically meeting.
Yeah.
Rupert, you always want to call him Murdoch. Rupert, Megnot.
Yep.
Introduced me to Chris, and yes, which I can't say that name either. And hey, John Wild's on. He's got a radio program too, That Damn Radio Show, which is awesome. And then Chris said, "You don't want to talk to me. You want to talk to Niel." And then, of course, the great thing about our world is that we're already connected because of Gert Garman.
Yep.
Gert Garman, who was the first guest on my show. Bill Moore's on, or he's on. Hi, guys. She was the first guest, and she's worked with you.
Yes.
So welcome. Enough of me talking. Give us a little bit of the Gert background and then tell us a little more about you.
Yeah, you're great. Thanks for having me on. Gert Garman, we met working for the mayor of Orlando, Buddy Dyer, many moons ago. I was actually, when she was brand new, I ran to her office and I drew a big graffiti that said, "Welcome, Gert."
Oh,
and
that endeared you to her for life.
Yeah, you know, Gert, that's it. You're in the club. And then, after we both sort of moved on from working for the city, we produced all of the voiceovers that she does for many of the local banks and for banks that she works with. And then we did some videos for her. So we're not just great friends, but we've done business together.
Done a lot. So she does voiceovers, and are these professional voiceovers?
Yeah, she does professional voiceovers. She also does the
wink
beyond hold calls, right? And I've actually also hired her in the past to do some professional video voiceovers. So
all right, so we've got to. I promise everybody that you've got to start with "I was born," but we just don't want. We don't want to be at 20 minutes and you're in first grade like my friend Bob Lee did on his show.
Okay.
So give us a little bit of background on you, where you came from, and then obviously how you got to where you're at doing the successful thing that you're doing with podcasting and digital marketing.
It all started under a coconut tree in 1973 in Venezuela.
There it is, Venezuela.
My parents are from Caracas, Venezuela, and so that's where I was born. And around 2 years old, they moved myself and my family, my brothers and sisters here to the United States. And we went back every summer until we were about 14, 15, which is when I moved to Florida. And so the fast forward version is I went to school here, Popka High School. In 91, when Universal was being built, our class actually won like a Young Filmmaker Award. And then that allowed us to do our first ever real shoot on the back lot of Universal. That's when it was brand new, and that's where I really got bit by the bug.
Right.
And then from there, I just done it for the next 20 plus years, just doing film, TV, video production, audio production. I DJ'd for a little while.
You've done it all.
Yeah, promoted and managed musical groups, and then now we're just doing video production, high-end documentaries. And
so how does it go, though, from getting the bug, like you said, at Apopka High School in 91? Were you a senior? Please tell me.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So, wow. I graduated in the 80s, people. And most people will say that's a lie. You were in the 70s, Ted, but it's not. 83 people.
Oh, my goodness.
So how does it go, though, from you got you got bitten by the bug? What's the next step? Do you go to school for that? Do you just begin? How do you transpire into that?
I get asked that in the past. It's different for everybody, right? Some people get an opportunity like that and they start doing it more, or they just do videos with their friends, do films. I've always been entrepreneurial. Like as soon as we won that, I took that and opened up an office at 17 in Altamont Springs somewhere and started shooting weddings and doing videos. And I immediately wanted to turn it into something more than just, I won this prize at Universal Studios.
Right.
So for me, it was like, immediately I knew like this opportunity I could use it to get work, and that's what I did. And so once I did that, I got honestly hooked by being able to take care of myself through my own talents and not really having have to be a worker bee. I was for many years after, but I always had it on the side until I grew it big enough to finally be able to leave in 2013.
So what a lot of people probably want to, well, I definitely want to know. We joke that there's all the research and development money goes to the drinks we're drinking right now. Cheers, by the way.
Yes.
Ted, stay away from the bulls today. Yes, this jacket will get you, John. You watch out.
Stay away from the bulls.
I can't make it up. This audience is awesome. But how do you make it into a business? I think is what a lot of people want to know, including me. So you have the business. I understand the videography part, weddings, DJing. But then you take it to the next level and you begin to do things like voiceovers, and then you begin to shoot a film, and I want you to talk about your documentary.
Sure.
And then you get into this new age thing called podcasting and digital media and marketing. So give us a little bit of an idea how you make the transition, because I think a lot of people want to jump into video, but they don't know how. They want to jump into podcasting. They think they can do it. Trust me, it's content, babies, and he's probably going to tell you the same thing. If you don't have enough content, one podcast doesn't count. So hey, Allie McCarroll, she's the one that's having the event tonight that I'm emceeing. So give us a little bit about that.
All right. Well, I just talked about this on my podcast, and I went through the whole how did I go from a cubicle to who I am now, sitting next to the man himself here. But basically, it was really organic, and I think a big part of it is survival in the art industry. Okay, so yes, I immediately started doing video production for money. But then when video production became everybody can do it, it was like, what can I do to be a little bit different? So I started recording artists. I started doing DJing. I started mixing and mastering music. Then that became everybody that can go to Full Sail can do that. And I was like, what other talents do I have to pull from? Okay, I started doing photography. And I always have been very much a teacher. My mom says I share too much. So I started coaching people. So it was all kind of organic, right? Podcasting was, I moved to Tampa, I left the city of Orlando, I was full-time in my business, shaking in my boots, had a baby as soon as I moved, so now I'm a new dad, and I wanted to uproot a business from the ground up, so it was organic, it was like survival. So I started looking at all the different ways I could monetize, and podcasting was like another platform to reach a new audience, and as a service-based business, I was like, here's a way to introduce Wild Style Media to people.
Which is, I mean, it's so awesome, and it's it doesn't have to be costly. Like a lot of people, we joked earlier before the show, people say, hey Ted, good luck with your radio show today. I've got a face for radio, but that's not what this is all about. So podcasting though, people like to listen, and they do, but they're afraid of how their voice is going to sound, or they're afraid again about the content. Where am I going to get all the content? I've got all these great ideas. How am I going to make it into something that actually makes sense that people will listen to?
Absolutely.
It's not just, hey, pick up a microphone and just talk. You have to have some planning, unlike this show. You have to have some planning involved where you actually have to do some research because you're talking.
Yeah, it's content. And listen, I started my podcast with no money. I started with no knowledge, and I am that guy who built it from scratch. But I can tell you, looking back, and hello to Lou, by the way. It's one of my clients. Is that you have to have something that you would talk about anyway if you were doing it for free and without a show. So if you are somebody that loves to talk about weddings, you could do a great podcast on weddings, but podcasting is work. It takes time to get guests, to curate your content, to then go out and do social marketing for the podcast so people know it exists. Then you have to go to podcast events. You have to put yourself in front of the audiences. And people pod fade pretty quickly, they say about 7 to 10 shows.
Pod fade?
Yeah, because they realize it's too much work. They can't keep up with their work schedule.
Well, also, what about the content? Back to that, because that's the new oil, the new currency, for lack of a better word. Content's everything. I think, like you said, so if you've got a passion, let's say weddings, and you want to talk, or even let's take since I never talk about my business, you take loans, for example. I could talk about loans all day long, but that doesn't mean I can stretch that into a 30-minute podcast every week, I assume. And I can talk, how many times can you talk about interest rates and the different kinds of loans? So you really have to understand that you have to have a passion, but the content backup has to be there, and that's where the planning, I think.
And the strategy for that kind of show would be to tell the stories of people with loans.
That I could do.
Good and bad stories, because what people want to listen to is amazing storytelling that they can relate to.
Yes.
And they listen to you. They're tuning in for Ted, the host, and what he delivers. So you're the draw. But then, if you only talked about the corporate end, you'd bore me in 5 episodes.
Correct. That's kind. I bore myself in 20 minutes. I don't even know if I'd last 20 minutes.
Okay, maybe after one more of these.
Yeah, have another one of them. It does help with the liquor, doesn't it? It makes it go so much smoother.
It's all about storytelling.
It is about. So that's our hashtag is what's your story. I say that a lot because people really do have a story. Everyone has a story. So people will sometimes get on and they want to sell their wares. And I always joke that I'm not QVC. Don't bring your product here and try to sell it on here. I had somebody do that once, and we didn't talk about the product once, but she felt better because she held on to it tight, Sue Hannah. And she was a great guest. And at the end, she said, oh my God, I didn't talk about product once. Because that's not what it's about. The content can't always be just all about product. You can throw it in there because it's a natural part of the conversation. But when you're talking about yourself and your business, people are engaged in you and they like you. And then they're going to make the natural transition to your business.
And they love the behind the scenes. Like I love that yours is share your story because ours as a service provider is let us tell your story. Mm-hmm. So once you're ready to share your story, we're the ones that help you get it to the planet, right?
Which I love that.
But you couldn't be more right. It is about content. But I'll be honest with you guys, it's not even just about content. It's about engage. It's like my friend Glenn the Geek, who owns the Horse Radio Network, the largest horse podcasting network you've never heard of, but it's huge. He says it's entertainment, right? It's education through entertainment.
Yes.
Which is what you'd be immensely great at. You'd be able to educate people, and it's very entertaining. When you can achieve that, then it doesn't matter if it's a podcast, if it's a video podcast, if it's your YouTube channel. You're educating people because it's all about, they want to know what you know, so you can help them skip some steps so they can get further. And that's kind of what I've realized in the past 5 years, which is why I moved back to Orlando. Why I'm sitting here is exactly what we're trying to do. Educate you guys through some entertainment, but also to be able to put out amazing visuals. Don't do a 50% thing. It's now that you are the brand, you have to put your best foot forward. And that doesn't mean a lot of money. It just means your best foot forward. Like my dad says, you can cover yourself up in the cold only as far as the blanket will go.
That's correct.
Otherwise, your feet show.
So we have a lot of comments on it. Althea says, hi. Hey, Althea. Bob,
hi, Althea.
People buy people over product and service. That is so true.
Yes.
Tammy, hey, Tammy. And Gert joined. So, hey, Gert.
Hi, Gert.
Yeah, she just said, hi, cute boys.
Why, thank you. I condition it every day.
You do. Well, apparently I have to stay away from the bulls today, Gert. That's what John Wild said earlier. But that's right. So people buy people. That's a great point, Bob.
Yeah.
And so when we're on the show, we're talking about stuff, or you're trying to help somebody get their brand out, help them with their branding. There has to be a story. I mean, it must be very difficult if somebody comes to you and they're dry.
Yes.
I don't know how to entertain that, so I probably will fail miserably in that area. Because at some point, I can't drag it out of you. And if the audience isn't going to connect, if I can't connect with you, how is the audience going to connect with you?
And it's also hard, and because we live in a world that everything's become do-it-yourself. I mean, we're sitting here right now doing our own broadcast. We don't have a crew of 10 people, which is my background, right? So it's been amazing for me to see that. But as a coach, it's been hard to tell people, get out of your own way. Like step one is move away from yourself. You need to be able to be coachable or be able to be teachable, be able to be open so you can grow. It's not about anyone taking control from you. It's you allowing, look, the reality is every team is better than the single guy.
Right.
So the minute that we start talking about what we do, we're going to come out with an amazing product together. But if it was just Ted or just Neil, you'd have the best of Ted and the best of Neil. But you put us together and you've got the best of two amazing resources.
That's an awesome
analogy. So when you're out there getting your stuff going, that's my first step advice is collaborate. You are not
Why are
the
people
first
so
person.
afraid of that, though? I'm not afraid. I think collaboration is key. I think collaboration is key, not just in business, nonprofits. It doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're not out there collaborating, especially in our wonderful city, we have so many opportunities and so many collaborative people. But collaborating is so important, but people want to hold on to their idea. I know it's your baby, but you've got to let the baby grow up.
Oh, yeah.
And you eventually want them to move out of the house, and the only way to do that...
And pay you back.
That is never going to happen, I have a feeling. But you're right about the collaboration. That's so critical.
When I worked for Mayor Buddy Dyer, and he's still the mayor of Orlando, I will never forget, he was being interviewed about the Amway Center as it was being built. And he said, this city will be built on its partnerships, not my vision as the mayor. And when I moved to Tampa for 5 years, that was always in my head, right? And coming back home and seeing what has been built in the little time I was gone, the things that have come out of the ground, I mean, literally arenas and performing arts centers, is partnership and collaboration. He couldn't have done any of those by himself, nor could the developers.
And nor would he have wanted to. And Michelle Brennan just got on.
Hi,
Hey,
Michelle,
we
my
love
former boss.
Her. She's awesome.
How are you?
I served on the flag committee with her.
She's really nice.
That's my first real taste of mayor's office and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so Michelle and her team were so amazing, and then Rebecca Fernandez is amazing with Mayor's Academy. I mean, there's just, again, this is back to collaboration and so many opportunities here in the city to build your business and your brand.
Ground up.
But you definitely want to have, you want to have somebody who's an expert in the things that you are not.
Yes.
So one of the things there's a lot of things I'm not an expert at. I mean, the fact that I can put a camera in a camera stand and hit the button, that makes me close to an ape. There have to be a lot of people around me that are willing to help me creatively. So so when you're working with someone, you tell them obviously to get out of their own way. Then what's next? What do you do with them? Because you obviously are taking them on a journey.
Yes.
You're probably pulling them along a little bit in the beginning because they know they need you, but they're afraid to need you. It's an interesting.
And they're also trying to live to the Gary V's of the world, and they're trying to follow what everybody else is following and everyone's trend following. So when the first step you do is say, hey, step aside for a second, let me try and show you how we're going to create the TED trend, so people can follow you instead of you following everybody else.
Like
that's
the TED
scary.
trend.
Yeah, he's got his own drink. It's amazing. But the next step is to, once you kind of get them to go, okay, I'm ready to listen, then it's like, now we're going to actually pull what your real vision is and reveal it to themselves. You know what happens to every entrepreneur? The vision gets lost as they collaborate, because now you're taking on other ideas, okay? So it's not that it's bad, it just got a little bit buried underneath the sand.
Sure.
So the first step when I step in to work with people is, let's get you to slide over, let's get your idea back to the top of the water, and then let's re-engage it from all different angles with all of today's tools. You're in a world today where you can start a business tomorrow morning, and through online, through social media, and through some good connections and networking, you can make it. I did it.
You
I
can.
literally did it.
I'm a big believer in that. And I think again, this goes back to the collaboration part and making sure you surround yourself with people who know what they're doing.
Yeah.
You can do that, but you also want to do the growth right. Like, so for the show, for example, you want to make sure it's smart growth. So we haven't pulled the trigger yet, but we have an entire idea about podcasting. We have an entire idea about the TED show and sponsorship. We have a speaking engagement. We have the TED program, which we created. So we want to make sure we do it though, and never lose sight of the original organic beauty of a Facebook Live show with two people on it, and there isn't a big giant crew around. It can be, I've had a lot of people offer to come to the studio, and I'm not opposed to that on certain things, but I don't think I will ever get away from, let's do a generic, basic show that really is kind of grassroots.
I couldn't agree more. And to kind of parlay off of what you just said is, I wanted to talk just a little bit about, when I tell people that you got to go to the next level, it's everybody's job to tell you no, and it's your job to daily prove them wrong.
I love that.
So when we wanted to do the movie The Messengers, which is a film about podcasting, no one would talk to us. No one wanted to be featured. No one said it would be a real movie because we couldn't prove it was going to go to Hollywood. But now it's on Amazon. Everybody can see it. You can look it up. You can go watch it right now. But we had to raise $25,000 out of using Indiegogo. We had to go out and find creative ways to get the money when there was none. But the point I'm trying to make with all of that is that it was an endeavor, though different than this show, that the more people told us we couldn't do it, the more we were going to get it
determined, right?
And that's what you have to do. When you leave, you are in a sea of a million other entrepreneurs. When you do a new podcast, you are in a sea of other podcasts. Why should I find the TED show? What will differentiate it? And it's going to be your content, but it's also you as a host have to be dynamic. You have to be engaging, and I have to want to meet you and talk to you, even if you had nothing, no show.
Correct, because if you sit there and your NPR, like the Saturday Night Live skit, even though it's funny, real NPR is educating, but if you aren't, they're not super, like, it's very mild.
Yes, it is.
And so to me, that would be very difficult to do, especially because I would get bored. The information's great, but if you're not entertaining and edutating, or whatever the new term is, for educational entertainment, and you're not providing that, people have the attention span of a gnat. We all do, right? So 30 seconds, you've got maybe a minute. And I also think one of the things I was going to ask you about is, when I search for a podcast, it is so hard to maneuver through the minutia of that. And what I can't figure out is, like, I'll do a search for inspirational. And then it's not enough that it's inspirational, and then sometimes it's not inspirational.
Yeah.
And so it's so weird. Like, I feel like the podcasting world, if they should do a better job overall, all of us should, of getting making the content accessible so we can search it better.
that was talked about in our film, where someone said, "What's the future?" And they said the future will be someone will find a way to index podcasts better.
I think that's brilliant.
There's also, in a sea of podcasts, there are great podcasts and there's not so great podcasts, and those are the ones that will pod fade, like I talked about earlier. At the end of the day, though, people are looking. The reason you can't find something under just inspirational is you have to be more niche about it, because what we're telling people in the podcast world is the riches are in the niches. So the more you are very specific, like mine is all post-production. I don't talk about much else. So sponsors that want to reach that audience will focus on me. But if I was just general business podcast, I'm like everybody else.
Well,
so
there's 9 billion of general business. So you're right, Bob. Bob Lee said, hey, Bob, it's keywords. So trying to figure the index part is so critical. Because I wanted to do, I forget what I was looking for, inspirational, blah, blah, blah. But I could not get to one. And then it's such a pain to click on it, listen to the advertisement for the first minute or two, then listen to them talk, and then it's hello, hey, how are you, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm 5 minutes in, and then I'm ticked off because this has nothing to do with what I was looking for.
No, you're right. It's the keywords, but it's also like, searching something like inspirational quote. It's going to give you all the podcasts that only deal with quotes. Inspirational Orlando will only get you inspirational Orlando. So it's kind of like honing in a little bit.
Yes.
But look, at the end of the day, though, there's a lot of people excited about finding their voice. That's what our whole movie was about.
We're going to talk more about the movie. So it's called The Messengers.
Yeah, The Messengers, a podcast documentary. It was shot last year. Traveled to Guatemala, Puerto Rico, around the country, telling the stories of podcasters. The film isn't really about podcasting. It's just more like the story of Ted and what led him to it. And by the way, he's a podcaster. Right. But the point of that movie at the end of the day was to tell you, don't be a podcaster. You could be a YouTuber. You could go be a Periscoper. Just get off the sofa and go find your voice. But the only problem with telling the entire herd to find their voice is now you have a loud herd. So who gets to the front of the herd?
The loudest?
Well,
the biggest?
The ones that don't pod fade. The ones that have a plan, like you said earlier, to get to the front. The ones that last and outwit the other ones. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, when I started podcasting, my first sentence, and this was when no one was in the room and I was shaking like this before I turned the mic on, I just said, would I do this for 5 years? Before I spend a dime, because I hadn't spent a dime. I did it for free at first. And then I was like, if I would do this for 5 years, then I'll do it. Because if you're going to podcast and you're not willing to do it for the next 4 years, it took me 3 years to get an audience.
Well, that's the thing. So that's sort of where we're at with the show. One of the reasons that I got to Niel was because I know that there's a natural progression. Let's take my business for example. There's a natural progression where I'm headed. And so there has to be at some point, I want to raise the R&D budget a little bit so we can buy bigger and better drinks.
And better drinks.
But in order for that to happen, in order for the show to be profitable, because there's really no cost right at this point. I mean, I have no cost but time. Mm-hmm. There are certain things that need to be in place, and I think people need to be committed to. I couldn't have out the gate on episode 1 unless I used Gert Garman as my shield, asked for somebody to pay to advertise on the TED Show, because what the heck's the TED Show? But I'm at a point at episode 147 where I've got the content, I've got the proof, I've got the stability and the dependability, and so people are willing to talk about it and actually approaching me now. And how that looks, I think, is where most people at the 1 year start or the 1 minute start, they want it to happen on day 2.
Yes.
Don't get into it if you think it's going to happen on day 2. I can tell you.
But
right.
you're funny. You talked about you, and I'm not trying to purposefully give you any ooh la la, but no, I am.
We're gonna send this to the kids.
I am. I've been watching you for a while since Gert was on, and I didn't know Ted at all. Didn't know his show. All I knew was I'm moving home, and he's doing something in my community. So I need to find a way to get to this person and support, help, whatever. But when I announced I was going to be on your show, I got tons of responses. I've been on 100 podcasts and didn't get that much response. What that told me wasn't like, ooh, people are excited that I'm going to be on his show. It told me your audience, you have enough buzz that when I said I'm going to be on this show, it generated a lot of congrats and response. And what that told me was this person's show has an engaged audience, has action takers that are even supporting future guests as they mention it. So they're in front of you, thanking your audience for you.
My audience.
And now they're here. I just saw like so many names that we know and names that we don't, but you are on the cusp. I think the minute you tie this to your YouTube, to your future podcast, whatever you do, and you just make it a nice robust circle, and everybody can reach Ted like in the different mediums, you're going to be huge, and it won't even be looking for sponsors. They will find you because they want to advertise to the very engaged audience that you've curated.
We have a beautiful audience.
They do.
Thank you for saying
They're
that.
very
They
attractive.
really are. They're You're not wearing this red
Come on,
jacket,
look
though,
how the
John.
man dresses. Somebody pay him.
Right? Somebody dressed me.
Somebody pay him.
No, they told me I was too old to be dressed. I'm like, come on, what young guy? I mean, come on.
But you're setting a bar, right? So another thing, when I asked you who gets to the front of the herd, okay, well, when I walked in, the very first thing I said when I met him was, dude, I couldn't miss you. I love the jacket.
You can't miss me.
But that's what you've done. That's a differentiator in your show. So that's a thing that makes the guest want to dress up. It makes the guest feel
That's
like
true.
there's an echelon I need to be to be on his show. You're going to rise right to the top because every other thing is just like, I think the world is too casual, people. I remember in the 50s, you used to dress up to do stuff. And
right?
tip
Mad
a hat
Men,
to a
all that good
lady.
stuff. Yeah, I love that.
You know, like get back to looking good and representing your best self.
I had my guests yesterday were David Siegel and Pete Crotty. Super important topic on opioids.
Oh, yeah.
And but Pete texted me about a week or two before, and he said, "I found my jacket." And I love the fact that he went out and bought a beautiful jacket to wear on the show because he said, "I want to be on camera and I want to look good." And he always looks good, but that jacket was rocking.
But the host set that bar. And I told you when I sat down, I had to step my game a little bit. And
I
get
love
some
it. He's got the
flashiness
nice
because-
cups.
But look, but I knew why. I've watched all his shows. I've seen like his bar, and if I'm going to sit right next to that person, we're judged by who we walk with, and I just wanted to be at your level because that's the level you set your show at.
Well, that's kind.
So then that rises your guest to that level, and guess what? They benefit when they share this out.
I agree.
They're going to attract a different viewer than they did if we would have both wore like our favorite sports shirt.
Correct.
Same
guys. They
guys,
won't
but-
let me wear it. I can't wear just a shirt anymore.
You can't wear Colonial High School.
I
Right
cannot
now,
wear.
but-
There's none of that happening. The last time I wore just a shirt, I had like 90 messages going, "Ted, what happened to all your jackets?" Seriously, sometimes I don't want. It's 90 degrees in
Yeah, it's a
August.
little
I
warm.
don't want to wear a jacket, but I'll never make that mistake again.
Full Monty edition coming
That's
next
right.
week.
All right, so we're gonna share. You do your show naked, John. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have no doubt in our mind, and that was kind of a given. We love John. I love John.
He's gonna get to the top of the herd pretty quick.
They're gonna be parting ways to let you go by, John. So we're gonna give all of Niel's contact information, everything about the messengers, how you can reach out to him.
Yeah.
Take a look at his social media. Take a look at his website. Any wedding. Jeez, I got the wedding on the brain. Any parting words of wisdom for them before we head
Oh,
out?
I hate that we're partying so quick.
I know, it
It's
goes
such
fast,
a fun
doesn't it?
show and
It goes so
great
fast.
drinks. Really, guys, the fastest way, I live on Twitter. If you want to find me, just go to Twitter at Niel Guilarte. I'm still there. But you can go to wildstylemedia.net for the business or listen to my podcast at allthingspost.net. And so really Twitter or Facebook's the fastest way to get a hold of me. We're here to help everybody. As far as parting words is, listen, we could sit here all day, motivate you, and then you go about the week, apply none of it, and then come back next week to be re-motivated. People go to church like that. You know, every
Agreed.
Sunday be reset, and then they don't apply it. Next Sunday, they want to be re-invited, okay? My thing is, be your best self. Take a little of what you learned today, apply it, so that you can be sitting in this chair. I was in Tampa watching this, wondering how I would ever be here. And today I'm going to leave here going, I was on the TED Show.
That's so cool.
So if you guys do that in your life, in your entrepreneurship, in your office, in your cubicle, just set a goal and do it. You too can sit next to whoever it is you're wanting to meet. And so thanks for having me. I'm super excited. You have our support
Blessing,
100%.
man. And collaboration. So we're going to collaborate.
Yeah.
And I think that I want to encourage you all as we're doing that to watch because the
Steve.
collaborations. Is that the Steve Martin from UCF?
Yes.
Steve Martin? Steve Martin. I love Steve Martin. We go way back. But honestly, I want the audience to watch because you'll watch the collaboration.
Yeah.
And that is so critical. And that's not necessarily something that's innate in you. Sometimes you have to learn how to collaborate. And it can be a journey, trust me, but once you get to the point where you know that it's important to your business and how your business progresses, it's going to be the critical part to growing.
Yeah, if I could leave with just one last sentence. When I work with my coaching clients, I always start with this. First thing I say on every call, you have to give people a way to meet you in shallow water. We are all just way too consumed with our business and ourselves. And we think that everyone's going to come out and buy from our funnel, just come buy all my stuff, go get my course, go get my book. And first thing I tell everybody, and I just coached someone that was the former COO of Home Shopping Network down to someone like Lou Hastings that's just starting a 501c3 for the Native American culture. It doesn't matter what it is. You got to let people approach you in shallow water, and then you gently pull them into the deeper water, and then they'll go anywhere you want.
I love that.
Because you're teaching them how to swim with you to wherever you're sending them. So that's my parting words for the TED Show.
Well, you
today.
were amazing, Neil. Thank you so
guys.
much. Cheers.
God bless all of you guys.
Cheers.
Yes, sir.
Cheers.
Signature drink and everything.
That's right. All right. We love you guys. We will see
God
you
bless.
tomorrow. God bless.
Bye, people.